There's a story about a woman that was getting ready to board an airplane. And she got to the airport and had some time to kill, so she went to the store and got herself a book and a bag of cookies. As she sat there, she had the bag of cookies in the open seat right next to her, and she opened it up and she ate one of the cookies. And now there was a guy sitting on this side that after she took one cookie, he reached in and took a cookie and ate one as well. Now the woman was kind of shy, and so she kind of gave him this look, and she thought, okay, I'm just going to reach in and grab another cookie. And sure enough, he then reached in and grabbed another cookie. With this, she didn't want to create a scene, but boy, she gave him the look of death that only my wife can do. Some of you know about that look of death. And just kind of looked at him, and she reached in and grabbed another cookie, and sure enough, he reached another cookie. And this went on, one cookie after another, till the bag was done. Well, she was so upset about this. She glared at the gentleman as she walked into the airplane and sat down, and she sat down and was so upset. She was just near tears. She went to open up her purse to grab a tissue, and there it was, her bag of unopened cookies. Oh, the little things. We're going to focus on details here today. Today is all about the little things here on our journey. You see, we are in the midst of a trek that we're calling a journey. We're just calling it Route 66, based on probably one of the most famous roads in America. Route 66 is the backdrop of our sermon series, but the travels by the guy by the name of Thomas Hall. A few years back, Thomas stopped by my house. He just needed a place to stay one night, and he was on this recumbent bike. If you know what a recumbent bike is, it's those things that makes you look like you're sitting down and you're kind of you really work your hamstrings on it. And so he was taking a trip from Montana all the way down to Texas. Before we visited a lot that day, and before he had to turn in for the night because he had a long journey ahead, he told Sarah and myself to follow him on his blog. And the basis of the blog entries is the basis for this sermon series. And so Thomas was indebted to him for kind of putting this journey together. So last week we started with the sense of the journey of our own Route 66, and we felt that the best way to do that was right here in the season of Easter. If you're not familiar with the church calendar, we are still in the season of Easter. That's why we have the white liturgical cloths up here. Now, I realize that a couple weeks ago was the big event, but in the Christian church, we actually consider that every single Sunday is a mini Easter. And so today and throughout this season, we're going to be talking about and paying special attention to what Easter means. It's a time of rebirth. It's a moment to put something behind us. It's an opportunity to strike out in new and different ways. And for the confirmands, it is a time to start their journey with Christ. So we are doing our own version of the journey on our own Route 66 of life. By doing that, we're following the travels of two men. Not only Thomas Hall, but also one that comes from our Bible, a man by the name of Saul. Now, Saul is not a lion, but we talked about him as a man by the name of the Apostle Paul. And so you're going to be hearing that throughout this late spring and early summer in this sermon series. And one of the things we talked about last week is that we learned that whenever we start a new journey, there's always some things that's a bit uneasy about it. There's some trepidation as we go into a new territory. It's new. We begin to ask some questions about things that are very uneasy. Last week, Thomas, he kind of spelled it out for us in his blog. He said, am I really ready to do this? Can I do this? You see, I think Thomas knew what was ahead of him today. He knew that things were going to get very tough before they ever got easy. So today, as we continue this journey, we are calling this Inch by Honkin Inch. Thomas says, woke up in Ovando, Montana in a shepherd's cabin, a sort of wooden covered wagon, compliments of the general store manager. Oh no, don't take Route 141. You'll have to scale McDonald Pass. No, you go up to Lincoln and over Flesher Pass, the locals told me. So I took their advice and headed up an even higher pass that when crested puts you on top of the world at 6,130 foot elevation. In-shape guys, young guys, in-shape fat guys, jogger moms, Walmart greeters, and much of the world might be able to scale the summit with little drama. However, for an out-of-shape guy, I huffed and puffed and hacked and stopped and snapped pics and read maps, sipped water, and ate Cliff Bars with each small gain. I really thought it was the end. Either my heart would explode or my knee would retreat up my leg. The wind swept through the pass at about 35 miles an hour, and the rain was nasty. But I took the advice of one reader who applies the story of the little blue engine that could whenever tough challenges arise. I would pedal 50 revs, then stop, then 50 more, and 50 more. And throughout the ordeal, I would mutter under my breath, inch by honkin' hinch, anything's a cinch. By incremental movement, it came to pass at Flesher Pass that one could actually drag their 40-pound recumbent bike, holding 150 pounds of biker and 60 pounds of gear, up and over a seemingly impossible obstacle. You just never know what you can do until you take the risk. What good advice. Great advice as we go on our own Route 66, taking it inch by honking inch. Today, the journey gets tough. What we find here is Thomas is going up past 6,000 feet. The wind is bad. He is feeling it. Now, he doesn't say it in his blog entry, but I'm beginning to think that maybe he's thinking about turning around. If you think about it, he's pretty close to home. All he has is his blog readers. So if he decides to just kind of call it quits, maybe he can just kind of turn around and go home. Everything will be fine. Kind of like if you ever start a new behavior and you don't tell anybody about it, that's pretty good. But if you do decide to want to make some changes, I want to share with you a statement that I came across, and actually I had in my office for a very long time. It goes like this: you can't control the situation, you can control you. And I think that's pretty good advice for our confirmands today. Because you are going to encounter some moments in your life as you begin this path, this journey, your own Route 66. And think to yourself, how did I get myself into this? It might be a relationship. It might be a terrible job. It might be a paper that is due in 3 hours at school and you haven't even started it yet. It might be a cause that strikes at your heart. I just ask you to remember these 9 words. You can't control the situation. You can control you. Thomas's advice is really at play here. Let's take life inch by honkin' inch. Last year, when her tiny church's membership dwindled to just 1 member, Olada Wise hit the streets. She became a 1-person evangelism team. She increased the membership of her church up to 11, increased the worship to 30. Such devotion led her to earning the small membership Church Layperson of the Year Award for 2016 in the Texas Conference. Wise, a retired teacher, had been a member of the Liberty Church in Caldwell, Texas since 1953. Widowed and mother of 4 children at 92, she still serves as the church treasurer. Called my favorite teacher by former school and Sunday school students who now are leaders to church, civic, and government life throughout the country, Wise still inspires youth and adults alike. 11-year-old Paul Beeler, son of Liberty's pastor Randall Beeler, writes of Wise, just being in her company, you know you are with a trustworthy and loving friend. Inch by honkin' inch. 1 small step, 1 ounce of persistence, 1 more cycle of the bike wheel, 1 more invitation to a neighbor to get them to come to church. This is life. Maybe it's 1 more day of radiation treatment and you know you'll be cancer-free. Maybe 1 more day at that second job and you know that you'll be out of debt. Maybe 1 more paper and you'll be that much closer to graduation. 1 more report, you'll be that much closer to a promotion. 1 more deposit to the 401k, you'll be that much closer to retirement. inch by Honkin inch. When I was in seminary, I had the great fortune to graduate with a real live opera singer. Probably the best semester I had in singing in the choir when I was in seminary was when I got to sit next to Mick McGuire, and I just followed him along. He was a guy that decided that the opera world was not for him. He went back to seminary. This guy could perform. He could sing like you wouldn't believe. And I learned more about the opera world in that one semester of a preaching lab than I ever could from watching a documentary. One time he presented us with a sermon, and I want to share with you what he talked about. He told us that he took this class called the Operetta Apprentice Class. Mick already was an accomplished singer. But he was looking for ways to better himself. He wanted to know how he could be a better singer. He wanted to know how he could be a better actor. He wanted to learn from the very masters of the opera world. And he wanted to know how he could handle agents and how he could handle all of the demands that took place in the opera world. And so there he was in that class. He was waiting for the masters to come in. Mick says that when this one master came in, he just looked at the guy and he says, this guy is going to tell me a world of wonderful things about the opera world. He said just by the way he held himself, just by the way he walked himself in, he was a master. And then the opera master looked at the class and said, take care of your feet. Mick McGuire says, take care of your feet? What does that have to do with singing? What does that have to do with acting? What does that have to do with the opera world? Mick said that he was so shocked that he didn't listen to anything else that this opera master said after that. But then he says, yet, after spending hundreds of hours on my feet in rehearsal and practice and on the stage, I wished I would have listened to this master's advice in how to take care of my feet. You have to focus on the little things, those small details to make your journey successful. Some of you know that I played college football, or played football when I was in college. I went to a school in Lincoln. It was actually the small school in Lincoln. But the year that I played college football, we actually had some guys that transferred over from the big school down the street. And we asked him, he said, after a few practices, we said, so what's the difference when you played at Nebraska compared to Nebraska Wesleyan? And one guy said, boy, we sure do run a lot here. And we thought, well, if you don't do running, what do you actually do in practice? And they said, technique. They worked on detail throughout the entire practice. I've come to believe that really is the difference as you go from high school to small-time college to big-time college to pros, is that focus on detail, on technique. It's what I learned from Mick McGuire. You focus on the small details. My friends, in our own journey here, on our own Route 66 with God right now, we focus on the little things. Last week we talked about that we are busy people. We don't have time for everything. And with school about to end and summer just around the corner, we're probably thinking about our sprinkler system. Did it survive the snow? We're thinking about fertilizing the lawn. We're thinking about getting the mower service. We're thinking about getting the flowers in and the garden done. And don't forget about the summer vacation plans. And with the month ahead, we're thinking about those end-of-the-year concerts and softball practice and which camp can we fit our kids and our grandkids into. And that doesn't even take into account our jobs and our health issues and those bills that we just continue to stretch in for another month. Does it kind of feel like we're facing our own mountain right now? We're busy people. And we have a hard time finding that time to do something extra, unless we deem something important. And we talked about this last week. Last week, we will find time for that one show that we want to watch. We will find time to get out in the garden, or to watch the Rockies, or to golf, or to fish, or to watch our kids' activities. We do make time for what we deem as important. You see what we're doing here? Inch by Honkin inch, we make time to make things a cinch. We learn to pace ourselves and do those things what is truly important. And that's what God is doing with this vision of God's church. All we're asking is that you give up 1 week of your time for God. Now think about it. 1 week out of 168 hours, 1 hour, my mistake. 1 hour out of 168 hours equals 0.6%. That's all we're asking is 0.6% of your time. 1 hour to God is that focus on detail. In our own Route 66 of life, we're going to face some huge mountains. And we can take on the whole mountain, or maybe we can take it inch by honkin inch, step by step, and allow God to reach us. By focusing on those details, we allow God to change our heart. And that's actually what takes place with Saul today. God gathered him as he faced his mountain and walked with him inch by honkin inch. Sue, would you read us the passage out of the book of Acts?
This is Acts 9:23 through 30. Saul's escape from the Jews. After some time had passed, the Jews plotted to kill him, but their plot became known to Saul. They were watching the gates day and night so that they might kill him. But the disciples took him by night and let him down through an opening in the wall, lowering him into a basket. When they had come to Jerusalem, he attempted to join the disciples, and they were all afraid of him, for they did not believe that he was a disciple. But Barabbas took him, brought him into the apostles, and described for them how on the road he had seen the Lord, who had spoken to him, and how in Damascus he had spoken boldly in the name of Jesus. So he went in and out among them in Jerusalem, speaking boldly in the name of the Lord. He spoke and argued with the Hellenists, but they were attempting to kill him. When the believers learned of it, they brought him down from Caesarea and sent him off to Tarsus. Please add God's blessing to this reading.
Thank you, Sue. Step by step, Saul faced danger. Inch by inch, he had to convince people that he was a changed man. At any moment, Saul could have given up. He could have thought, no, I'm going to turn around. This is not for me. He just started the journey. You know, it's not too late for us. When we start our own journey, we can always give up. We can always think, you know, we get to that mountain pass, it's too much, we can just turn around. But if we do, just think what we're missing. A woman was praying, so far today, God, I've done all right. I haven't gossiped, I haven't lost my temper, I haven't been grumpy, nasty, or selfish. I'm really glad for that. But in a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed. And from that moment on, I'm probably going to need a lot of help. My friends, we all need encouragement now and then, especially as we face the challenges of the journey. And we need this encouragement so that we don't get overwhelmed by the mountains before us, so that we can concentrate on those little things, inch by honkin inch, and focus on those details that makes life a cinch. I like to think of the journey as kind of the difference between some of us take life like this turkey baster here. We just can suck up all of this water and think to ourselves, we're going to take on the whole mountain. And we're going to take on the whole country by our Facebook posts. We're going to take on the whole school system because we don't like it. And we're going to take on every political cause. Because with this turkey baster, we can do just about everything for everybody. But when we do that, we miss the details. We forget about what is before us. One year, I was helping out with a camp up at Camp Noweskin. And there was about 20, 25 of us youth, and we were walking along this beautiful path right along Shadman Creek. As we were going along, about 4/5 of the group ran on ahead of us. And there was just a few of us that kind of trailed on behind. And as the group ran on ahead and we were trailing behind, 3 deer jumped right in front of us. 4/5 of the group completely missed it, because they were taking the journey like a turkey baster. But I kind of think of life and specifically what Saul and Thomas were doing, they're kind of taking life like a eyedropper. You know, those little details like take care of your feet, read scripture, worship here 1 hour at a time. That is the cinch that we learn to climb the mountain inch by Honkin inch. That's why we're in mission to those children in Africa. That's why we're in mission to those children, to our brothers and sisters across the street. Now, we realize that by taking it one drop at a time, it's going to take a little bit of time, but enough drops will fill a bowl. For Thomas, enough biquotations got him over the mountain. All it took was one drop to convince Saul to follow Christ, and that drop created the Christian movement. One drop started this church here. One drop built this edifice, this sanctuary 65 years ago. And one drop is going to maintain this church for another 65 years. Now I realize that the turkey baster, we can do things a bit quicker and easier, but it is the eyedropper that got Thomas over the mountain. It's those details that get us through the day. Things like prayer and persistence and hope and faith. Taking it each day, one step at a time, 1 inch, one drop, one moment, gets us over the mountain. Now, the turkey baster, I kind of think of this as a way to kind of control the situation. But it is the eyedropper that gets us to control us, you. You see, we do those things that we believe that are important. It's what keeps us going. It's what allows us to find the time. Inch by honkin' inch, we won't give up. Saul didn't, and the church grew. Thomas didn't, and got to the top of Flesher Pass. Us, we can't stop now. God is not through with us yet. In fact, God is counting on us. The world is counting on us. In the words of Thomas, you just never know what you can do until you take the risk. Once upon a time in a concentration camp, there lived a prisoner who, even though he was under a sentence of execution, was fearless and free. One day he was seen in the middle of the prison square playing his guitar. A large crowd gathered to listen, for under the spell of the music they became as fearless as he. When the prison authorities saw this, they forbade the man to play. The next day there he was again, singing and playing on his guitar with a large crowd around him. The guards angrily dragged him away and had his fingers chopped off. The next day he was back singing and making what music he could with his bleeding fingers. This time the crowds were cheering. The guards dragged him away again and smashed his guitar. The following day he was singing with all his heart. What a song, so pure and uplifting. The crowd joined in, and while the singing lasted, their hearts became as pure as his and their spirits as invincible. So angry were the guards this time that they had his tongue torn out. A hush descended upon the camp, something that was deathless. To the astonishment of everyone, he was back at his place the next day, swaying and dancing to a silent music that no one but he could hear. And soon everyone was holding hands and dancing around this bleeding, broken figure in the center, while the guards stood rooted to the ground in wonder. Inch by honkin' inch, we'll make it through this journey of our own Route 66 here in life, and we will make a difference. Amen. I'm going to make a slight change in our worship schedule for today, so go ahead and turn the lights on.